When making a movie, a filmmaker will often use an array of formalist techniques to make the movie appealing to a wider, mainstream audience. Many people often think that story is the most important thing to make a good movie, completely overlooking cinematography and directing. But if people usually prefer cinema over theaters, it is thanks to those formalist techniques used by the cinematographers and directors which cannot be applied to theater. YouTube is filled with videos on how to make your films more cinematic, but none of them talk about subjectivity, perhaps the most important formalist technique ever used in cinema. So here is a complete guide to subjectivity in cinema, which will make your short film go from amateur looking and probably boring to a professional level short film. A filmmaker can place the audience into the character's mind, allowing them to see what the character sees, hear what it hears, live what it lives, and in the best cases, feel what it feels. Whether it is through cinematography, sound engineering, editing, writing, or anything else, subjectivity, since its introduction in cinema, has become nearly a staple of classical Hollywood cinema. Subjectivity in film is a technique used to make the audience believe that they are experiencing a character's senses, notably sight and hearing. One of the many standard techniques to create subjectivity in a film is the point of view shot, often called the POV, which is where the camera assumes the spatial position of the character in order to allow the audience to see what the character sees. The POV shot is a powerful emotional device, as it literally allows you to become the characters, forcing you to consider their perspective and connect to them. However, to reach its full potential, the POV shot has to be used in pair with POV editing, which is when a POV shot is preceded by a shot of someone looking at something and followed by a reaction shot. POV editing works because it first allows the audience to become the character through the actual POV shot and then actually understand what the seeing means to the character through the reaction shot, allowing the audience to actually understand the stakes of the story and of what is being seen, but also to understand the character more through their emotional response, allowing them to connect more to them. A subjective experience can better be transmitted sometimes through an omniscient POV rather than through a first-person POV, and this can be done through cinematography and settings. Often in film, a character's internal emotions get to affect the actual world of the story, the settings. This is subjectivity as the audience sees the character's experience of the world rather than a more objective version of the world. A common example of this is how it often starts raining in funeral scenes, such as in Thomas and Martha Wayne's funeral in Batman Begins. This process has first been observed and theorized by Hugo Musserberg, a film theorist, and he called it the emotionalizing of nature, which is, simply put, the reflection of the character's mood in the settings around them. A character's subjective experience can be shown visually. It can be pretty straightforward, like through dream sequences or flashbacks in which the audience is directly put inside the character's head. Or it could be more subtle, like through a close-up of the character's face, which through the acting and the camera angle can reveal to the audience how the character is feeling. Even simple shot types, such as low or high angles, can carry subjective meanings. This is why when directing a scene and choosing which shot types you want to use, you have to consider which character's perspective you are showing. For example, if you want to show that a character is feeling weak, a high angle could do the job, and it would be subjectivity. Let's look at an example from the TV show The Queen's Gambit. Most of the chess games are filmed with very symmetrical and static shots, always filmed at chess level with characters in the middle of the frame and with their eye lines at the same level. This communicates Harmon's control of the situation and how confident she is in her victory. When she plays against Borgov in Paris, however, the camera starts moving around her more. She is filmed in high angles and isn't placed in the middle anymore. These less symmetrical and more dynamic shots communicate her fear and stress she is feeling. Her emotions are having a direct effect on how the audience perceives the world of the story through the shot types and camera movements. Sound is also a commonly used device to create subjectivity. When you hear a character's dialogues, for example, despite the characters being far away from the camera, it is subjective, as you are hearing what the characters are hearing rather than what the camera should be hearing. And this is a conscious choice you have to make when making a movie. Do you want your character's perspective to be shown, or do you want the scene to be shown more through an objective perspective, with the audience being shown the perspective of the camera in some way? If you choose the second option, you're willingly creating distance between the audience and the characters. And maybe this is what you want, but you have to think of it consciously. Also, the use of voiceovers or narrators can be subjective, as the audience directly hears what the character is thinking. Some sounds can also be lowered or emphasized to create subjectivity. For example, in the aforementioned Queen's Gambit, during the game between Borg and Beth, the sound of the characters pressing the clock is way louder and has more reverb than it would in real life. This communicates that she is very focused on the passing of the time. With all of this in mind, it is easy to find the appeal that some filmmakers have towards the use of subjectivity, as it allows them to break this barrier between the character and the audience and directly place the audience within the character's mind and make them experience their experience, making the whole cinematic experience more enjoyable and engaging. And everything I've explained until now is the very simple use of subjectivity. Subjectivity can be used in such creative and engaging ways, and it has basically no limit. This is why it's so rarely talked about on YouTube, because of how complex it is. Subjectivity can be everywhere. It is not a single technique, but it's a way of telling a story. And new ways of using subjectivity in cinema are being invented every day. Christopher Nolan's Memento, for example, uses subjectivity in a very bold and creative way, as subjectivity directly shapes the structure of the movie. In this movie, the audience gets to experience amnesia. Leonard, the protagonist, forgets everything he lives only a few minutes after living it, making it so he never knows how he got into the situation he faces. The film simulates this through its chronological structure that also leaves the audience confused in every new scene. The movie is basically told backwards, with the first scene being the last scene chronologically. So every time we see a new situation, the audience is just as confused as Leonard on how he managed to get into this situation. In conclusion, it is obvious that there is a global appeal from filmmakers towards subjectivity, and the filmmakers who decide not to use subjectivity in their movies are rare. Not only does subjectivity allow audiences to connect to characters way more easily, which is already a big enough reason for you to use it in your movies, but subjectivity is also something that you can experiment with. Subjectivity is a concept tightly linked to the human experience. Not only do we like experiencing other people's experiences through art, literature, and movies, we also are constantly questioning our own sense of subjective experience. We can never truly know how true what we experience is. How do we know everything around us is real? How do we know what we experience is real? How do we know colors look the way they do? Is it all just an illusion? This is a theme that has occupied the greatest minds of humanity for centuries, even longer. And even if you decide that subjectivity is only a simple tool that you'll occasionally use or a main theme of your story, it will definitely impact the way your story is told. This is the end of the video. I hope you liked it, and if you did, please leave a like and a comment and subscribe. Bye, see you next time. Oh.